What does it take for a compassionate, upright person, someone you'd trust with your secrets or admire for their warmth, to slip into acts of coldness, cruelty, or even unrecognizable darkness? Imagine someone you hold dear, a beacon of goodness, slowly fading into a shadow of themselves. This isn't a rare quirk of fate. It's a quiet, creeping possibility within us all. Today we're peering into a question that unsettles the spirit. How do good souls drift into darkness? By the end, you'll see the subtle forces that tug at our moral threads, unraveling decency into something starkly different. More crucially, you'll uncover ways to spot these pulls and hold fast against them, with the final insight offering a lifeline to reclaim your light. We'll lean on psychological revelations and the piercing wisdom of philosophers to trace this fragile divide between virtue and vice. This isn't just about others. It's a reflection daring you to ask, could I drift too? What keeps me anchored? Stay with me. This might shift how you see yourself and the world around you. The Lucifer effect, a term coined by psychologist Philip Zimbardo after his Stanford prison experiment, exposes a stark truth. The roles we play, the environments we navigate, and the commands we follow can twist even the gentlest souls into agents of harm. Zimbardo's students, cast as guards or prisoners, didn't start as tyrants or victims, yet within days the guards wielded power with a harsh edge, while prisoners crumbled. It's not that they were evil at heart. Something external unraveled them. Why does this happen? Philosophers and thinkers have long wrestled with this drift, pointing to forces that blur our moral sight. Take authority's pull. Psychologist Stanley Milgram showed how readily people bend under orders, delivering what they thought were painful shocks to a stranger, just because a figure in charge insisted. Immanuel Kant, the champion of moral duty, might argue this stems from abandoning our rational autonomy, letting someone else's will eclipse our own. When we surrender to just following orders, we drift from the good we know. Think of your own life. How often do you nod along to a directive, a boss's push, a friend's nudge, without pausing to weigh it against your inner compass? What if someone asked you to sidestep your values, claiming it's necessary? Would you drift or dig in? Then there's the slow poison of dehumanization, when we stop seeing others as fully human, reducing them to labels, obstacles, or shadows of ourselves. Empathy fades, and indifference takes root. Hannah Arendt, reflecting on the banality of evil, suggested this happens when we cease to think, treating people as mere objects in our path. It's not a grand leap, just a quiet shift. Ever dismiss someone as that type or not worth the effort? In that moment, you've stepped closer to the edge, where harm feels less personal. How often do you catch yourself sketching others in black and white, missing their colors? Group dynamics tighten the snare. Zimbardo's guards didn't act alone. They fed off each other, their roles fusing into a collective mask that buried their individual consciences. Jean-Paul Sartre, with his existential lens, might say this is bad faith, hiding behind the crowd to dodge responsibility for our choices. We've all felt it, the urge to blend in, to mirror the room's tone, even when it sours. At a party, a biting joke lands. Do you laugh to fit in or call it out? In a meeting, a shady plan unfolds. Do you nod with the pack or risk standing apart? The drift begins when we let the group's current sweep us along. These threads, authority, dehumanization, conformity, aren't distant theories. They weave through daily life. They hum in the coworker who cuts corners because it's expected, in the clique that excludes because they're different, in the silence you keep when speaking feels too loud. Friedrich Nietzsche warned, Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. The drift isn't a thunderous fall, it's a whisper. A choice to ignore a pang of wrongness, a shrug at everyone does it, a step away from the light you once held. When have you felt that tug? Did you pull back or let it carry you? So how does the slide deepen? It's rarely a single plunge, more a series of stumbles. Moral disengagement, as Albert Bandura framed it, is the mind's sleight of hand. It's not that bad, or the end justifies it. You fudge a task, telling yourself it's minor. You overlook a slight, claiming it's not your fight. Kant might call this a betrayal of the categorical imperative, acting in ways we'd shudder to see universalized. Each excuse widens the gap between who you are and who you could be. Reflect. When did you last rationalize a choice that nagged at you? What story did you tell yourself to sleep easier? Are any of us immune? The stark answer is no. Empathy or grit might brace us, but the shadow lurks in all. Nietzsche's abyss isn't a place. It's us, the untamed corners we rarely face. Ever snapped in anger, then wondered where it came from? That's the drift brushing close. Sartre would press us here. We're free to choose, but that freedom means owning every step, toward light or dark. No one's born a saint or a sinner. We craft ourselves moment by moment. What shapes your choices when the stakes blur? The tipping point often hides in plain sight. It's the coworker who starts small, gossip here, a shortcut there, until there's someone you don't recognize. It's the friend who bends to fit in, losing their spine. Arendt's banality fits. Evil doesn't always roar. It tiptoes in through thoughtless drift. How do you spot it in yourself? When did you last feel your values wobble? Maybe in a heated moment, a pressured yes. The drift thrives in those cracks. Yet here's the spark. Knowing this arms us. Awareness isn't enough. We need roots. Moral courage, standing firm when it's easier to fold, starts with knowing your stakes, honesty, care, justice. Test them. If I saw unfairness, would I speak? Surround yourself with voices that echo your best self. They steady you. Situational sharpness helps, reading the room's tilt. If the vibe sours, ask, is this me or the crowd? Small acts, lifting the ignored, softening a jab, push back the tide. Can we halt the drift entirely? Perhaps not. But Zimbardo's heroic imagination says we can pivot, choosing light over shadow. Sartre's freedom insists it's ours to claim. Start small, challenge a slight, hold space for the unseen. The deepest truth, good and evil don't split us from them. They wrestle within. Leo Tolstoy mused, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Every choice is a stitch. Will you unravel or mend? The mirror's yours.